Hey Brittany, I wanted to give you some audio feedback on your lesson plan on slavery. So you're looking at 5th grade social studies. You found your standard. Explain the expansion of the plantation system and slavery as the demand for cotton production grew. So students are going to have to be able to explain that system and find ways to give evidence that shows how slavery and the plantation system were connected to the cotton production. I wonder if there's another standard that addresses this as well, but for a sub-question, having one standard is a good way to address a sub-question. Now, your compelling sub-question here is, what would America look like had slavery not existed? What accomplishments would not be here? In the comments to the other side over here, I don't think I can expand it. Aha, there we go. I think the big question you're asking here is, how did slavery shape America? And within that, you might ask, like, what if slavery had not existed? But I think the really big question, the compelling question is, how has the institution of slavery influenced America and continuously, until today, continues to influence America? So we can bring that forward. And I give you some thoughts in here about some other sub-questions. What would America look like without slavery? How did slavery influence farming? Was slavery constitutional? How did slavery influence the Constitution? And so I kind of kicked a couple more ideas your direction as you are writing this lesson here. But specifically, after looking over your lesson, the big question is, how did slavery shape America? And the sub-question is, how did slavery influence farming and what was grown and vice versa? So you might even ask, like, how were cotton and slavery intertwined? And answering that sub-question will help students answer the bigger question. So these smaller questions, so why do they need to know about the expansion of plantation and cotton and slavery? Well, because we want the students to understand that how farming and slavery were intertwined and how that shaped America moving forward and continues to shape America. Because if we go forward past the Civil War, we say, well, slavery's over, but it didn't go away. It became sharecropping, and so it became economic slavery as well. It wasn't just the ownership of the person, but it was now the ownership of their labor under the guise of payment in the South. So you may want to maybe be a little more specific about what's the compelling question and then what's the sub-question that this lesson is specifically addressing. Concepts critical. Slavery. Slavery is a concept. I would also argue another concept you're addressing here is plantation farming, or just farming itself. So now getting into the procedures. You've got an intro, you've got a middle, and an assessment. So it seems like that this is the outline that you've been taught before, and this is the outline you want to use. That's fine. I would encourage you to always have a time expectation. So if you look, I've given you, the intro should be between 10 and 15 minutes. The middle, I think, and then down here I have the reading time at 10 minutes. So I read your intro idea. And you say you want to start with a reading of this Friedenberg, A Tale of Hope and Courage, and then ask them if they've heard of slavery. I would encourage you to maybe start with a visual analysis. What if you put up 2 pictures that represent plantation slavery and find 2 of them that are very much contrasted against each other? And then in doing so, you can have them write about, tell them to take 5 minutes and write what's happening in each of these pictures. And then ask them, what's going on in these pictures? And you can kind of get a feel for what they're thinking about, and then be very clear with them, as you say. And I agree. There are appropriate and inappropriate ways to talk about the subject of slavery, and so we have to be cognizant of our language use. I appreciate that. I think that's important to teach them because that's part of becoming citizens. And then you say you allow them to share what they already know. But before that, I think you should let them analyze some pictures and talk about those pictures, and then ask them, what do they know about slavery? And kind of elicit, after they've had a chance to write about something they're looking at, then you can kind of dig into that and read the story to them. And I think that letting them have a moment to kind of acclimate themselves to the context of the book, and then reading the book might make it hit better. Now, the middle of your lesson you ask, they'll bring their attention back to the front of the room and ask why they believe the demand for slavery grew. And so here you might want to, you can ask that question, but you might ask, like, why was there such a connection between cotton and slavery? And I want you to really think, why are you showing a video? Really think about this, because the way it seems here is that the video is replacing a lecture. They're going to watch this video on YouTube, and the students are going to take notes. So how do we get rid of the notes, or how do we make this more of an investigative situation? What's the information the video has that the students need in order to answer that compelling question or that sub-question? So any kind of evidence that you're giving them, if it's primary or secondary source information, you want them to be able to use this to answer that question. And so the activity, it has to be more than just taking notes. You want to have a specific purpose. And so a graphic organizer that identifies like pro-slavery, anti-slavery, or how cotton influenced slavery or how slavery influenced cotton, and then they have to write down examples of that from the video, would be more useful than just taking notes. Does that make sense? And then your assessment. Your assessment is they're going to write a poem, a paragraph, or short story about how slavery and cotton how cotton expanded the need of slavery, or the need for slavery. And so if this is for your digital story lesson, you want them to create a digital story. And so they'll use a digital tool of your choosing to tell the story of how cotton influenced the expansion of slavery, which means they want to watch that video for examples or useful information that will help them tell that story. But I would encourage you to have more than just one video. Maybe there's multiple videos that they might watch, and this is where we can flip the classroom. Maybe you start with one in the class and you do it with them, and then they go home and they watch 2 or 3 other videos to really get some robust information for their own digital story. And maybe not just video, but are there photographs, or perhaps are there other primary sources that they might use? I hope this discussion of your lesson plan has helped you to kind of think about how you might engage a broader, more complex lesson plan. I will write up some more notes here in the side for you to consider. Nothing in here is wrong. I think you have a nice lesson plan. I think it's pointed. I think it's important. I'm trying to help you think a little more actively about what you're doing with the students, and that it's we want to move beyond just watching and taking notes of a video. We want them to do something with that information, and how we can begin the entire class using a visual analysis of some photographs or paintings. Okay? Thanks, Brittany.